Today I want to share with you everything that I've loved about RVing, but also what has me questioning whether RVers might be kind of crazy. My wife, 7-month-old baby, and I have spent the last 2 weeks living out of this RV, visiting amazing locations and doing something that I'd never heard of before called boondocking. I'm going to share with you everything that we have loved about living in this RV, as well as some of the things that may not be so enjoyable about RV life. But first, let's take you on a tour of Ruth the RV. It's a rental from a company called Road Surfer, who has locations all across North America and Europe. They're not sponsoring this video, and we paid full price for this rental. One of the key things I was looking for in an RV rental was I didn't want it to be too big, but I wanted it to be big enough that Steph and I had a separate sleeping space and living space from baby Josie. Ruth has a double bed at the back, bed above the cab, and then the kitchen table can also be turned into a bed. Steph and I slept in the back while Josie slept on the folded down table. But we'd also use the back bedroom for Josie's naps. We'd put in her pee pod, close the curtain, and she'd nap like a champ. Because of where we've been traveling, the days are really hot and the nights are really cold, so we wanted an RV with both heating and air conditioning. We use the heating pretty much every night on this trip because the nights are getting quite cold, but we didn't use the air conditioner that much, partly because we did have to turn on the generator or be connected to shore power. The generator is separate from the main RV engine, but uses fuel from the same fuel tank, which is really convenient. You're not having to fill up 2 fuel tanks when you stop for gas. The generator can also be used to charge up the battery of the RV if you are stopped for an extended period of time at a place without shore power. Ruth also has a full kitchen with fridge, freezer, 3-burner stovetop, oven, and a sink. There's also a microwave, but it can only be ran off of shore power or when the generator is running. And one of my favorite parts of the RV is the big bathroom with a separate toilet, sink, and shower. Let's get into the good and bad things that we've experienced with RV life, starting with the good things. One of the big reasons we decided to go RVing was the cost savings, and we realized the cost savings pretty effectively due to 2 factors. The first one being that we're able to use the full kitchen in order to make a lot of our meals, so we weren't eating out very much, and we saved a lot of money with that. The second thing is that you can do something that I mentioned earlier called boondocking, and that's where you just pull up to some random spot and you camp. There's a lot of rules and regulations around boondocking, and it can be pretty tough when you're around big cities, but as soon as you get a little bit more remote, it becomes really easy and a ton of fun and a great way to experience different locations. One of the things we discovered early on this trip, which has made boondocking really fun, comes from the sponsor of today's video called Harvest House. And basically, you pay a yearly subscription, which is very cheap, under $100. And from there, you get access to hundreds of different farms, wineries, breweries, and historical locations that you can go park at. You can see all the locations on their website before buying a membership, which you can get 20% off on using the code JUSTIN20. There's also a growing number of locations that have electrical and water hookups for your RVs, usually with an extra cost, but still a fraction of what you'd pay at a standard RV campground. It allows you to visit these really cool locations. We've parked at multiple wineries, and it's really been fun to park right next to the vines, but then go in, have a tasting, and then be able to just walk back to our home. The best part about it is that once you pay the yearly subscription, the stays at the locations is free. They just encourage you to maybe do a wine tasting or buy a bottle of wine. Harvest Host was definitely a game changer for this trip. So if you're doing any sort of van life, RVing, or traveling around, then go check them out at the link down in the video description. Another big benefit of RV life was dealing with weather. It was really nice to have an RV to escape to with a hard side when it was really windy or raining or really cold or really hot. Like I said, we had full heating, full air conditioning in here, so we were really able to kind of deal with the weather in an effective way. Another aspect that was really nice for me, who mostly does tent camping, is that over the course of 3 weeks, it was nice not having to put up and take down a tent every day, especially after it was raining or there was a lot of condensation. We stayed next to the ocean a lot as well, which introduced some strong winds, and it was nice to escape the wind inside the RV or use the RV as a wind block so we could hang out outside still and not get pummeled by wind. Being fully self-sufficient was also amazing, and there's really 4 things that allows you to be self-sufficient in an RV. The first one is having fresh water. So there's a giant fresh water tank on here that you can use for drinking, doing dishes, showering, flushing the toilet, all those things that you need water for. You also have a big battery bank for charging your phone, your electronics, using for turning on the lights. It's amazing how much battery power you use. And with the RV, it recharges as soon as you start driving again. So if you drive for a minimum an hour a day, you're probably gonna fully recharge your battery every single day. There's also a built-in propane tank that's used for the heater, as well as the oven and the stove on the inside. Steph and I had a deal where I did most of the driving and she did most of the cooking, and she was able to cook some really amazing meals with the kitchen setup that we have. The fourth aspect is the fact that you have a full bathroom in here that allows you to use the toilet, have showers, and then it stores all that wastewater inside the RV so that you can dump it once you get to a dump station. We'll get into that a little bit later when I explain one of probably my biggest negatives with RV life. Having a full kitchen was a huge benefit. Like I mentioned, there's a full-sized fridge with a freezer, so we were able to store about 3 or 4 days of food inside that system. As well, you had a 3-burner stovetop, a little oven underneath, and then a big sink with a little fold-out kind of ledge that extended the kitchen a little bit, which was great when doing dishes. We cooked a lot of pasta for dinners and then a lot of toast and eggs for breakfast, and Steph even made some French toast at times, and it was delicious. Another thing that we picked up was a portable propane fire pit, which was awesome because it got pretty cold at nights, and once Josie went to bed, it was nice to sit around the fire, stay warm, and because of fire danger, propane is a much better choice than wood fires. I also picked up a foldable grill that went over top of the fire pit, and we were able to cook some sausages, hamburgers, and some things like that that you'd barbecue over top of the flame. Everything turned out really tasty. You just had to be a little bit conscious of where the sausages and hamburgers were relative to the flame so that they weren't getting too charred. There's 2 more benefits I want to share with you when it comes to RV life. One of them has to do with our bedroom, which is at the back of the RV right through that window. We got amazing sleeps on this trip, which is really important when you're out for 3 weeks. When I'm camping, sometimes I don't get the best sleeps, and being kind of drained from that day after day for 3 weeks really starts to take a toll on you. So being able to sleep on a comfy bed with lots of great pillows, a comfy mattress, thick pillows too, the ones that really allow you to sleep on your side effectively, was amazing and allowed us to approach this trip recharged and ready to go. The final benefit before we get to the negatives is probably the obvious one, and that's that we're super mobile being in an RV. We weren't kind of tied to hotel rooms and things like that. We could just drive wherever we wanted. We're able to change plans quickly. And because of that boondocking factor in Harvest Host, we're able to kind of make plans day by day instead of having to really be locked into an itinerary. Let's get into the negatives now. And the first one is kind of the flip side of that mobility. And that's the fact that even though this is a relatively small RV, there's some giant ones out there, it's still kind of tough to park as well as maneuver through cities. We drove through Los Angeles and Hollywood, and as the person who was driving the RV the most, it was tight at times and definitely not the easiest thing. Another negative has to do with what I alluded to earlier, and that's with the bathroom situation. So behind this little flap here is the dump valves. The way waste storage works inside of an RV is that there's a black tank which stores everything from the toilet, like poop, pee, that kind of stuff. And then there's a gray tank which stores water from showering and the sink. But eventually those 2 tanks fill up and you need to dump them at something called a dump station. And it's basically a spot where there's a hole in the ground at a campground or an RV park. You pull up to it, you attach a hose to this spot right here. You open up the black tank valve, dump all that stuff down the tube into the hole, and you open up the gray tank valve, flush all that bad stuff out of the tube down the hole, and at that point you're dumped and you can fill up those tanks again. Another negative has to do with campsites. Full hookup campsites where you are able to hook up water and electricity are a lot more expensive than tent campsites, almost double in a lot of cases. So when we did go to a campground where we wanted to hook up electricity, fill up our fresh water tank, dump our black and gray water tanks, it did cost us quite a bit of money, but then it kind of got made up for by the fact that over the next few days, we were able to boondock. And that was kind of the ratio that we're aiming for, 2 to 3 nights of boondocking, and then that would kind of drain us and fill up our tanks. We go to a campground, fill everything up, drain all the black and gray tanks, and then we're able to boondock again for a few more days. The final negative is fuel costs. This thing uses a ton of fuel because it's so heavy. It has such a big engine and it can get costly. We only drove for about an hour or 2 a day, so it wasn't too bad for us on this trip, but it could really start adding up if you're doing a lot of driving. That being said, if you are looking to get into RVing, I think I would recommend only driving for about max 1 to 3 hours a day, and then use the rest of the time to enjoy the locations that you're visiting. As a little bonus, I want to share how our 7-month-old baby Josie did on this trip, because she was a big reason why we decided to go with an RV, and we learned a lot about RVing with a baby. One of the biggest things that we learned was it's important to have some sort of containment system for a baby, especially if they're just starting to army crawl or walk. And for us, we had a pea pod for her sleeps and naps, which was just kind of like a mesh tent that contained her, but also was really packable and portable. And then for sitting and eating meals, we had this foam thing called a bumbo. She basically sat in that. We were able to put it on tables, bring it to restaurants. There's a little tray you could attach to it. And that really allowed us to keep her immobile while we went out to restaurants, ate meals at home, or cooked or did things around the RV. The third key thing was a play mat with these corners that folded in order to kind of contain her a little bit. We'd bring that anytime we went to restaurants, wine tastings, and we just threw her on the ground with some toys and she'd just sit in that, play, have a blast. It was probably one of the most important things on this trip because she was contained a lot inside the RV when we were driving places, so it was nice to have somewhere that she could just lay out, play, move around, and get a little bit of activity. If you're an experienced RVer, let me know your favorite parts of RVing, what you dislike about it, and then if you're someone who's RV curious, Let me know if it's something that you may have learned a little bit about from this video and whether it's something that you might try out in the future. If you're someone who's looking to get into backpacking but are a little bit worried about comfort, go check out this video right up here where I go over my full comfort backpacking gear list. It's everything that I bring on trips in order to be as comfortable as possible.